Lately.
Oh, that's all right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Tracy, you've recorded it. I'm Gail Langley. I'm with the Colorado Main Street team. We have here from Main Street Tracy Stoffel, our extraordinary Main Street specialist. And our special guest speaker today is Miss Lisa Popovich, and she is the executive director of Main Street Steamboat. They are at the top tier of the Main Street program and do absolutely phenomenal things. Everybody loves Steamboat. You're truly authentic mountain. And while Tracy is pulling up the slide deck, I will also mention, and I'm not going to mention the number of years, Lisa, but Lisa's background before moving to Steamboat and taking on her current role was actually in merchandising and retailing for major high-end type of establishments. And I think, who did you work for, Lisa?
So I have worked in almost every kind of retail. So I've worked for the May Company and Macy's in the department store. In department stores, I worked for Ralph Lauren, Tommy Hilfiger. I've worked for Calvin Klein. I worked for Chanel. I worked for Borghese. I worked for TJ Maxx. So that's completely different discount retailer. Eddie Bauer, Specialty Outdoors, Route 21, Specialty Fashion, and Junior Wear, um, and Nautica and Petco. So Petco is grocery. So I think I've hit almost every kind of retail that you can experience in lots of different ways. I was a store manager for many years, then a district and regional manager. I've been a national recruiter for Eddie Bauer, and a national trainer and district recruiter. I scouted real estate for Route 21. I've done everything that you possibly can do um, in retail except product development. Didn't do a lot of product development, um, but spent most of my years, store side and merchandising and marketing are my specialties.
Well,
So
wonderful. Well, with that, we're going to let Lisa kick this off. And Tracy can go to the next slide. And Lisa, take it away.
okay, good morning. So really the purpose of this conversation today is directed at our Main Street managers and economic developers so that you can have a good conversation with a business owner and understand what they're doing, where they're coming from, and you can be able to make a quick assessment visually um, as to where their business is at. And I know that sounds a little crazy, but you can generally walk into a store and kind of scan the store and know how they're doing by the way that their store looks. So I have always I've always done this. I start from the outside because the very first thing that your customer notices is the outside of your store. So most store managers or most store employees, especially in a small town, enter through the back door. There's an employee entrance or there's a back room entrance, and people come through the back door and they might go out the front door for lunch, but a lot of times it's not their natural entry point as an employee. Your customer never comes in the back door, right? Your customer always comes in the front door. So it's really important that you stand in front of your store or stand in front of the store that you're assessing and look at it from a customer perspective. From the very beginning, is the sidewalk clean? So in Steamboat Springs, my biggest frustration is snow on the sidewalk in front of the door. Like one store will be completely clean, and then the next store will be covered with snow. You have to make sure that the front of your store is clean and inviting. So, is the sidewalk clean? Is there trash out there? Are the windows clean? Um, I would say a small business owner, one of the last things they want to spend money on is cleaning their windows. Um, and is probably the most important thing that they can do, because if your windows are clean and it makes your store look dirty, and people don't want to shop in a dirty store. So their first impression of your store is their lasting impression. So you want to make sure that that first impression just knocks their socks off. So clean windows, clean store facade, front of store clean, and then not too many posters and things on your door. So this is a mall door, not a street side door. But if you go to the next slide, you can see, oh, back again, sorry. I looked down and you already changed, Tracy. You're all over it. So if you're entering from outside, you want to make sure that you can see through your windows, that you can see what's inside. A lot of times in a small town, everybody wants you to put up a poster. Hey, we're having this event, or the library's doing this, or the school is doing that. Can you put this poster up in your window? And as much as we want to support everybody, you should choose a certain a center of your store or a place of business in your business to put those posters, because the first thing someone sees when they open your door shouldn't be that the high school is having a bake sale this weekend, or you're doing a ski swap, or there's a special movie at the library. Like, that's wonderful for those people and great for those organizations. And yes, you want to support them, but that is not the first message you should be sending to your customer or to a customer for your business. So making sure the front of the building is really, really clean, and that everything is inviting, that your windows are exciting, everything's clean. We can move inside the building, that we're sure that's what it looks like. So now we're going to walk through the doors and go inside and look at some displays. So I'm just curious, like, go ahead and advance, Tracy. So you want to make sure that things are eye-catching, and these displays are. And I'm just going to talk to you about why they are. So you can kind of mentally process. So obviously um, color is appealing, right? Our eyes go to color. And so the visual on the left with the paint pouring out of the cans in different colors is really appealing, but the 3D aspect of it is what really catches our eye. To the right, it's nice and neat, but if you look through that display into the store, there's so much happening. I'm wondering if anybody can even tell me what they sell. So it's colorful and eye-catching, but it isn't necessarily representative of what's going on inside. I think it might be a bookstore, but I'm not sure. So the one on the right is colorful, but maybe got a little bit too much going on in it. So we'll go to the next slide. And so again, you can see 3 dimension is important in your windows, making sure that you're drawn in to what's going on and that you show what's happening. So the store on the left is a flower shop, and there's some live flowers and some paper flowers, some nice display. The store on the right is a gift shop with lots of different things. So I think it was Deborah who said she sold lots of different things. This is a great way to not overwhelm your customer with a display, but show that you have a variety of things in your store. So let's go ahead and go to the next. So I'm like, we have to participate because we have to participate. So curious, okay, what's wrong with these storefronts? So unless you may think there's nothing wrong with these storefronts, but can you guys see, can anybody have a suggestion for what is not great about these storefronts?
Well, all of the boxes packed up in the Ace Used Auto Parts, right in the window. It's just tons of boxes.
Right, it's a mess. It's like I would be afraid to go in there. because I would be like, I'm not sure if this is even really open. So how
On the
about
dance,
the dance
on the
connection?
dance connection, along the very top of the windows, there's 4 that have something in them and 3 that don't. And then every window is covered and it looks like they're not open and they're doing reconstruction to me.
Right? And so your first impression is your lasting impression. The first opportunity you have to connect with your customer is the way you appear from the sidewalk. So to me, this is not the impression that a dance studio should want to exude. It's inconsistent, it's messy. Um, you know, I would say, like you might say, oh, well, all the signs are handwritten. There's nothing wrong with a handwritten sign as long as it's done neatly and consistently with purpose. So I used to have a sign over my desk, and some of you are old enough to remember this, the milk commercials, and they drink the milk and they'd have a little white mustache and then they'd say got milk. Um, I had one over my desk that said got purpose, because you should do everything that you do when it comes to visual merchandising or branding of your store. And this goes to all the things that we do with Main Street and how we brand anything, an event or um, our website, anything. You want to do it with purpose. You don't want to do it by accident. So to me, it looks like they threw a lot of stuff at the wall and uh, didn't quite succeed. And I would say the last thing about the dance connection is all the stuff on the door. Like you can't really read what it is, but there's so much stuff on the door. Really editing down is really important. So let's go to the next slide. So when you walk into a store, obviously what's right in front of you, the very first thing that you come across is the most important part of the store, right? It's Boardwalk and Park Place. It's Broadway and Broadway and Vine. It's or Hollywood and Vine. It's the most important piece of real estate, and so you want to make sure that your most important merchandise is right there when you walk in the store. You want to put your best foot forward. You also want it to introduce your customer to whatever else is in the store. So if you're a paint store and you just also happen to sell like your wife makes, I don't know, tea towels. Like you don't want a table of tea towels in your paint store as you walk in, right? You want to make sure that whatever represents your store the most is right up in front. This screen says that most shoppers turn right, and that's because we drive on the right side of the road. So think of your store as a racetrack. So people are going to walk down the right side, turn around, and come up the left side. So when you're making your displays, you want to orient them in that way. Not like, I don't mean like on the left side of your store, everything should be facing the back. That's not what I'm saying. But you want to keep in mind that your second strongest position is whatever's to the right and just behind your first view of your store. This will sound counterintuitive, but what's right behind you to the right is your weakest area. Does that make sense? So, because you're going to walk past it. You're not going to walk in and turn immediately to your right. You kind of turn slightly. So what's ahead of you and to the right is important. And you're not going to see what's behind you to the right until you leave. So those are things to keep in mind. Products should always be not always, should be at eye level, the most important things. So when you go to the grocery store, the things that are at eye level tend to be the name brands and the things that are the most expensive. And then if you have to bend really far, it's a lot less expensive, or if you have to reach very high, it's a lot less expensive. Because the things that are the most convenient are the things they want to sell. So the things that are at eye level are probably the most expensive, but probably what you're looking for. So you want to keep things visible and you want to group like things together. So there are different ways to merchandise a store. So let's go to the next. So if you were to own, okay, so if you went to the grocery store, you expect the grocery store to be set up a certain way. But if you go to a clothing store, you expect it to be set up another way. A lifestyle technique is what's pictured on the left side of your screen. So you have a more lifestyle approach to how they're merchandising. And then a slightly more category, there's a little bit of category on the right side. However, it's still presented in a lifestyle way. So they're presenting you this is a category, these are all soap. Here's all your soap, it's all right here. But they present it in a way that is soft and more homey and appeals to your senses a little bit more. Visually, our brain likes things that are light and dark. They like contrast. So if you look at the soap picture on the right, way in the background, there's some bright colors in the front and then darker colored packaged merchandise towards the back. Your eye gets drawn to that because of the contrast. Our eyes also like asymmetry. So most people would think that the best way to display something is to make sure that everything is exactly right and everything is perfectly symmetrical as you display it. That's a great way to display something like jeans, folded all in a straight row. Or if you're in a hardware store, hammers are all right here, right? All your hammers are together, all your screwdrivers are together. You don't want a lifestyle presentation when you're going to look for a screwdriver. That would be irritating and frustrating. But when you're buying something that's more impulsive, a lifestyle approach is more effective. And that asymmetry is more effective. If you're a hunter, men can relate to this. Most men, when they shop, they're hunters. And so they're looking for their pants, or they're looking for a dress shirt, or they're looking for their socks. So when you walk into a men's store, things are generally displayed by category. Women's merchandising, if you look here, you see that things are grouped together to build a sale. So this table display to the left features things like candles and lotions and things that have a similar scent and go together. The glassware that's on the table goes with the other items that are on the table. And it looks like it's all a Mother's Day presentation. These are all great gifts for mom. And you see the clothing in the back. Table displays are incredibly effective and usually lead you into the store. So this is usually something in a smaller store that you'd see at the front. In a larger store, you'd see a table anchoring a wall because it's low, and then leading into the visual behind it of the wall. So if you notice, the pink on the table ties into the pink behind it because it's all one display. It's not just a table display, it's a display including what's behind it. So when you're merchandising a store, you want to think of pyramids and ski slopes. So ski slopes, this table is the bottom of the slope and it leads up to the back. It draws your eye. That whole visual draws you all the way in. And then the top is much higher than the bottom. So the top is, oh, it's time for Mumford's cookie. The top is the sign that says "Mum's the word," and then it comes down like a pyramid into the smaller items. That's just how your eyes like to look at things. So this visual to the right, this visual to the right. Oh, Mumford might need a cookie. This visual to the right just naturally does that. I'm sorry, he's gonna bark until I give him a cookie. Can I take a second? And any comments?
No, and John, your question that you put in the chat, I'm going to get to that in a little bit because I know Lisa's engrossed in her presentation. So we'll ask her what ideas she has about museums. It's a good question. And if any of you haven't seen Mumford, he is our mascot for Main Street.
Yeah, sorry, and his schedule's thrown off because Dad's home. What was John's question?
John had a question in the chat if you had any ideas or suggestions for window displays for small museum gift shops. He thought that would be extraordinary.
So I would say one, you want to use all the same principles. You want to pick an item or a color or a theme and tell a story in your window about what's in your store. In a museum store, if you're, I work a lot with a museum store here in town. If your exhibition in your museum changes, like we have 3 shows a year. So often what they'll do is take the poster, the advertising for that exhibit and blow it up, and then feature things that naturally align with that exhibit in the window so that the store becomes an extension of the museum, but shows some other things as well. Because that museum, I mean, like if you have a museum store attached to your museum, you're using it to help drive your revenue. So you want to make sure that whatever your content is makes sense. So over the years at our museum, we've deleted a lot of items because it didn't make any sense for a museum store. But your window visuals use the same techniques. You could either do it by category or by lifestyle, and then you'd pick a story to tell. So the story would be about that exhibit. You can augment that story with color, with lifestyle, or with here's all these different things that relate to this exhibit. And as long as they tell the story of what that exhibit is, it will make sense. As long as you use the principles, pyramids and ski slopes, depth and interest, when you use some height and color. Like it's not visual merchandising isn't that complicated. The hardest part of it is like once you do it is maintaining it. And if your visual is so complicated in a small store, if you sell something out of the visual, does it now wreck your display? Because that happens a lot in a small store. We have, again, we've got by category here. So you can see what I was saying with pants. Like, so here's your nice, like neat rows of pants. They could be neater. But there's nice neat rows of pants. Okay, I'm coming in to buy a pair of pants. I'm going to grab this. I can almost guarantee you that if you're standing in front of this display of pants, when you turn around, that there would be a rack of shirts that go with them. Because you want to be able to sell someone a pair of pants, and then you want to make sure that they don't leave without a shirt that goes with it and maybe a belt. So when you're looking at the display to the left, it's set up by category, but it also is, again, it says all local favorites. They're not necessarily things that you would sell together. But again, I think Deborah was saying she had a lot of local brands. Featuring local brands right now in our current economic climate is definitely a great way to drive business. People want to understand what's local, and they will, I am sure, over the next year, um, start to understand the difference between buying local and buying something from a catalog or from overseas and online and having it delivered. So again, here's some category displays. So there's all your Doritos. That's the perfect category display. Can you imagine if those Doritos were displayed in a lifestyle fashion? Like you'd be like pulling your hair out trying to find your cool Cheetos, like the Cool Ranch Doritos. Anyways, um, but then dresses by category, but also by color. Jackets all together. If you're it's really apparent on the bottom. That's a men's store. Men's clothing is almost always displayed by category, but often anchored by a table that uses a lifestyle method that leads you into what's behind it. Okay, let's go to the next one. So here's your lifestyles display. Can anybody tell me like how they feel about these? Any comments about these displays? Any observations?
The one on the right is kind of monochromatic.
It's very white, right? Like you can't really distinguish what's on it from the pole that's behind it. That would be my observation there.
I think
And
the
then
one on the left is a little cluttered.
and I would say the one on the left is a little cluttered. Like there's a little bit too much. I think your first indication is when like the backpack's kind of falling over. It's like a bridge too far. But
I like
like
the one on the right that I know I'm going there for Easter things. Like that's why I'm walking over there. Whereas
exactly.
the one on the left, I'm like, what am I looking for here? It just hurts my face.
Right, it hurts your eyes, doesn't it? Because you're not sure what to focus on. Like there's too much color and just too much stuff. So a little editing on the left. And then I would just say, like, if they had brought all they needed to do is like pull in some pink from that basket, and that would be perfect. It's just a little too white. How about here? Any comments here?
I loved these. Sorry.
They're beautiful. I'm just going to say the picture on the right shows you a little bit of asymmetry. So the skis are not quite balanced with the rest of the display, but that's what kind of makes it interesting for you to look at, because then that orange is pulled over into the other side of the display all the way from the bottom to the top. That orange and yellow continue, and it's why it's appealing. And the same on the left, everything's nice and neat and by category, but and it's sort of symmetrical, but not really, right? Like the shoes lead up to the top, but then there's a mannequin on the other side. Like those are both like beautiful and perfect displays. They introduce what's behind, on the left, it introduces what's behind them really well. Everything's folded nicely. It's by category, but also by lifestyle. Those are both really good examples. Am I
For me,
making
the
sense
picture
yet?
that was on the right with the skis, I
Mhm.
would have had to level the skis at the top and retake the picture because one of them was lower, and that would just drive me crazy all day.
Well, I can bet you that they take those skis up and down, and it looks like they're not all the same size either. So that skis are like, they're probably 3 different size skis. So
But
to
I would
me,
level them at the top and not at the bottom.
They're not level
That's-
at the bottom either, if you
No.
look close. Yeah.
But
But here's the thing. I will say this, like neatness is important and it's very important. It's nice to have sharp folds, but you don't want to have a sharp fold or something so perfect that people don't want to touch it. Or you don't want to be so focused on what it looks like that you miss an opportunity to talk to the customer and sell it. Because let me just add, like, why do we do this? Like, why do we make sure, why do we want everything to look good? Anybody have a thought there? Like, why do you want the store to look good?
To make sales.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you want to sell
Yeah.
stuff. The whole point
wanna
of
bring
this is to
people
put money
in.
in the cash register. So, so if you focus in, like, yes, you want it to be perfect, but if it's not quite perfect, sometimes it's more approachable.
yes, and I get that. And I don't really mean that I want it perfect. I
But
just
for the
want
picture,
the top or the bottom consistent.
uh-huh.
And so in that case, if they're not the same length, um I would lower them going down the wall so that they're not intentionally the same, look like the same height. But that's just me.
And I think, you know what, if you have time to do that, that's a great way to look at it. I have a feeling that this is for ease of for the, you know, they put the display up, the hardware is where it is. Um, that often happens. People, the stores are limited by the kind of hardware that they have, the kind of displays that they have. And to do that,
Absolutely.
you know, it might take
Yes.
an hour to do that when that might be a great use of your time. But it depends on, like, if you're setting this up in October, I would say, yeah, that's a great use of your time. But if you're setting this up in for us in Steamboat in March, that wall's is gonna be like completely destroyed in 2 hours anyway. So you want to make sure that it's easiest to ease of selling. To me, always it's like, yes, it should look good and it should you want it to pop, but you always want to have in the back of your head, am I going to be able to sell this? Do I have to walk to the back room to get a ladder? How am I going to get that off of the top? How long is it going to take me to refold everything to make sure that it's perfect? You want to look at your whole, like the whole business when you're doing this. So here's another example on the right of lifestyle. You know, they brought in the cow head, the skull, to kind of reinforce the lifestyle looks great. I have a feeling it probably looks better in person because the browns are all kind of brown, but the light, you know, I'm sure that again you can see the brown in the background. That leads you up um, to the next display. I'm behind somehow. There we
Yeah,
go.
we're-
Okay, so what's wrong here?
Okay. Everything.
So I'm just gonna say the display on the left, it looks like they did everything that's in there on purpose. Do you know what I'm saying? It's not that it's messy, that they did it on purpose, but they overdid. So what could change on the left?
I would take the bike and the surfboard
Take it out of there,
away.
right?
Yeah,
Because you can't sell what's
And-
behind it.
right. You're losing space.
Mm-hmm.
And the
Mhm.
same thing for the backpacks in front of the shelves. And maybe
Mhm.
they're really a few feet away from each other, but it looks like they're right up against it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's also a pair of skis like on the other side leaned up
Oh,
against
yeah.
those.
Yep.
There's way too much going on. And to your point from the very beginning, you can't really see anything because there's so much in there. There's a yoga mat, and this is a really good, like we could we could have a list of things to find because there's a yoga mat in there, there's a bike There's a bike helmet in there. There's a pair of boots. There's wood. Like why are there stacks of wood in there? Like that's and the sleeping bag that's kind of opened up really doesn't achieve that lifestyle goal. It just looks messy. So sometimes we overthink things. What about the display to the right?
It really bothers me that there are lids on those bins because it's like, I don't know if I would be like going, should I open those up and get to what's inside?
That's a
Aside
good
from the
call.
mess.
That is a really good call because yeah, people aren't sure whether they're supposed to go in there or not.
It actually looks like a closet.
Yeah, it does. It does. And then I'm not sure what those are under adventure. I think they're backpacks and waders. But I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
they are, Lisa. They're backpacks. Yeah.
They're backpacks. It looks like the two all the way to the left are waders. It's hard to see. It's hard to see what's there. But it's colorful, right? It's still colorful, still vertical. It's just not right. It's not inviting. So we're gonna kind of flip to branding and signage. Everything that we do when we own a store, we are the brand. So when people really they're wondering why their business isn't great. I have a business in Steamboat that I'll wander into and they wonder why their business isn't great. And there's like the list goes on, and a lot of it is what's on here. You want to point your customers in the right direction, but I want to talk a little bit about standards of practice right here. So there are things that we do every day. We don't set up a visual completely from start to finish every day, but you might spruce it up a little bit because you want to make sure every day that your store is dusted and neat and clean, the floor is clean. If you were to walk into a store and it's dirty, you start to think, well, if the store is dirty, do I really want to buy something here? Do I really want to spend some time here? And is the quality of the merchandise I'm going to get here the quality I'm looking for? So standards are important. So part of standards of signage is making sure that everything has a price on it, especially in small, locally owned stores. I can't stress the importance of having a price on every item more. One, you probably don't have enough help so that if the time does come that you're busy and you have more than one or two customers in there at a time, you can't tell everybody how much something is. And someone, if they can just turn it over and see how much it is, or there's a price tag on there, that's really important. Sometimes less is more. So if you have one of these slides at one point we had said, don't put all your merchandise on the floor, sell from the back. And then we had a long conversation about selling from the back versus selling from the floor. If you're selling $200 or $300 handbags, well, I don't want, if you have 12 of those handbags, I don't want to see 12 of them on your floor because it makes them look less expensive and it lowers their value to me as a consumer. So in that case, less is more. That's when you would like to keep the rest of those handbags in your stockroom in a secure place because you also don't want to lose one to theft. If you have a handbag that looks like a $300 bag, but it's $20, $19.99 or $24.99 or $34.99, having several of those bags out shows that they have a lot of value. So it just depends. The more space that you give something, the more value it has. It's why when you walk into a museum, you have lots of space to move around the art, right? Because it's extremely valuable. If you crowded all that art together, it wouldn't seem nearly as precious. And you would also like worry about, am I going to knock it over? Um, so when you're selling high price items, less is more. More space around the item is important. If you're selling pens, you want to have all your pens out on the floor. You don't ever want to have to go to the back to get a pen. The same, you also want to make sure that you're considering how you represent the brand. So in this same store that I walk into, that's often messy and kind of a little dusty, the store owner always looks the same. She always has a blue sweater on and she has blue hair. And she's selling very high-end ski clothes. It's important for you to look the brand. It's easier in a store. You can that sells clothing because you can buy the clothing and represent. But for example, if you're selling, I don't know, if I were going to work in a hardware store, I shouldn't wear an Armani suit to work, right? I will look stupid. People will be like, she doesn't know anything about hardware. If I'm selling really high-end housewares, things like that are designer in nature, I should make sure that I'm dressed correctly, that I shouldn't have dirty jeans on. I shouldn't be wearing a sweatshirt. I should be wearing something that's a little bit more upscale. You want to make sure that your signage reflects what you're selling. So, making sure that your fonts are the same on all your signage from front to back, that you don't use a ton of different fonts, that you don't use a lot of different colors or sizes of signs. You choose. You have a table sign size, probably 5x7. You might have a small card size to call out individual items that are like 2.5x3, that maybe it folds in half. But use the same font and the same color all the way through the store so that people understand that that sign is there on purpose. And it should only call out certain things, because really the most effective way to sell something is to interact with your customer. It isn't where you have it placed. It isn't how you have it displayed. It's really the conversation that you have with the person that comes in your store. Excuse me. But it's important that these visual cues are there, because if you're talking to another customer, you might not be able to break away to talk to them. Can we go to the next slide? So here's just more branding and imaging that works. Can we go to the next one? So some signage. I love this bubble tea sign. It's really bright and cherry. You know exactly what they sell inside. Honestly, this "come in, we're awesome" is a great sign. And those are available absolutely everywhere. And people seem to really react to them well. Here's some more just great visuals. You see the swoosh is made out of sneakers. So that's clearly a Nike store. To the left, it looks like, I think that's a Halloween display with all the brooms for witches looking for a new ride on Halloween. Can we go to the next one? Just more clean signage. Same here, more clean signage, even though it's handwritten or a handwritten font on the right, nice and clean, really crisp, great background. You know exactly what's happening there. Your last impression, I want to talk about just real quickly is your wrap stands. A wrap stand is where you wrap the sale, so that's where your cash register is. So it's equally as important as your entry into the store. It's your last impression of the store. You want to make sure that there's not too much clutter at the wrap stand. People tend to want to, they'll be like, oh, I have 3 of these left. I'm going to put them next to the cash register. And over time, like here's the cash register, here's the cash register, here's the rest of the counter, but there's only this much space to wrap the sale because you have all this other junk. If you're going to put something at the cash register because you want to sell it quickly, that means you have to sell it quickly. That means you have to bring it up. You have to say it. You have to say, hey, did you see I have these bubbles for 25 cents. Like, how many bubbles do you need today? So that you get rid of them. And the same is important for you to notice when you walk into a store and they're saying they're struggling. It's another point of access that's super important. You knew when you walked in the front door and you kind of saw how the exterior of the store looked. You kind of walked through and you took some mental notes about signage and is it neat? Do things make sense? Does it make sense that these clothes are next to those clothes? Does it make sense that there's candles here? But then you get to the cash wrap and you're like, okay, now there's a bunch of junk everywhere. Is that making sense? Or is it nice and clean and neat? And so, and really super inviting and give you a really good impression of the brand on your way out the door. So those are just mental notes that you can make to help your owners through that particular part of the store. The sign and tell me about these signs, guys. What do you think? What's wrong with these photos?
Ish. How do I
Ish.
know what time?
Yeah, it's cute, but irritating to the public. Your hours should be your hours. If you're open 11 to 4, you're open 11 to 4. Now, if you're open to 11 to 4 and there's someone in your store, you stay there. Or if there is traffic outside your store and you can stay open, you should. But if it says 4 and if you leave that store at 3:55 and the door is locked, someone who comes and pulls on that door at 4 o'clock isn't coming back. So those hours are super important. It's okay to open a little early or stay a little late, but you have to at least work those hours. And you really should think about when is the most effective time to be in your store. I have this conversation a lot in Steamboat because summer is very different than winter. In the winter, there's not a whole lot of reason for you to be open before 11 o'clock in the morning because here, everyone's skiing and they don't really get downtown until the afternoon. Most of our stores want to be open like 9 to 5 or 10 to 6. And they want to close at 6. And that's right when everyone's coming down to have dinner. So it's thinking about those hours of operation and why they're important is really key. So here's just some summing up of what we were just talking about. Dust your shelves regularly. Face products and displays. Facing means like turning your label so that it's out. You want to make sure that your labels are all nice and straight and out. Like if you have candles or jars of jam or honey. Keep your floors clean. It's often the last thing that stores think about is what the actual floor looks like. Especially if you sell any kind of food stuff or wellness, the appearance of your store of your floor can be really detrimental if it's not clean. Put stuff away. Pay attention to the exit and entrance. So here's just some great store standard pictures. This is not so great. I believe I've worked at all of those stores. Keep your labels the same. Use familiar discount promotional pricing. So if you're a store that does a lot of buy one, get one 25% off, consistently use the same kind of promotions or the same kind of pricing end in your prices end in 99, your prices end in 0, or your prices end in 7. It's important to understand why. Sometimes people, what they'll do is 00 ending in 0, it's a full price item. 99 means they've marked it down, and a 7 means it's a clearance. Being consistent in your folds is important. And keeping colors together is important. Keep going, Trace. Just some examples of good signage and good ticketing. Same here. Keep going. So here's a category photo. Can anybody tell me what's not so great here? I'll go ahead and point it out for you because you might not notice. It looks like they're taking inventory. So there's like weird tickets all over the place. It's just kind of
Yes,
messy.
and that's what you look at rather than the product.
Right. You go like right for that little ticket in the middle instead of, oh, it's a bunch of swimmy stuff. So last thing I want to say is, especially in small towns and in Main Street towns in particular, what's going to differentiate you from someone who's buying online is a couple of things. One, they walked into your store. So if they walked in, chances are they want to buy something, because unless you have a lot of things that are locally made, they can get what you have online. So think about the experience the customer has when they come in your store. Think about the customer experience. And I don't mean that, you have to have you have to have balloons and a party and hot dogs and hamburgers every weekend. And it's more, do demonstrations. If you sell scarves, you should know 10 ways to sell scarves. I worked for Eddie Bauer for a long time, and one of the things that he did when he first opened his store is he strung tennis rackets in the window because it made him look like he was busy. He would take his fishing poles out to the sidewalk, and he would cast his fly rods out into the sidewalk because it created it drew attention. It drew attention. So like sampling is good. Make sure if you sell candles that you light one candle, you pick the right fragrance. Usually something vanilla. Think about your lighting. Is it too bright? Is it too dark? And what kind of music are you playing? Are you playing music that you like, or are you playing music that your customer will like? Here's some examples of making sure that you have some sampling. There's really good signage that supports this sampling. If you're going to sample, you want to make sure that you are interacting at the same time. You can always partner with somebody else. Connecting your businesses to each other in ways that they can cross market through demonstrations is huge. We do that a lot here in Steamboat. We used to do it with our fashion shows and some of the things that we did there. But every experience is different. Think about your lighting. I can guarantee you, guys, if you walk into your stores downtown and you walk around, look up and just take note of how many light bulbs are out. It makes a huge difference, and it's subconscious to your customer. Like you might say, well, I know that light bulb's been out for like 3 months. No one even notices. It's like they might not notice, but subconsciously they do. Making sure that that your lights are focused on your displays and that they're not just pointing up in the air. And I think we're almost there. These are great examples of lighting. And then the last thing is to think about what your store looks like when it's closed. So that lighting in your window is really important. What is it going to look like when someone walks past your store and you're closed?